Okay guys, so let's try this again and pick up where we left off yesterday. Sorry, I am not feeling quite as good today, so webcam is not going to be part of this. But we're going to try and get through it anyway. The really awesome good news is that me, Mr. Matlock, and Mr. Nichols are going to try to get together over spring break, and hopefully he'll be able to record some of these videos and teach you guys, so you'll get like the super awesome, amazing lessons from him instead of me struggling to remember what I wrote on my notes a week ago. So, let's get back to Gibbons versus Ogden. The state of New York signed a Monopoly Act for steamboats with Robert Fulton. If you'll remember back a chapter or so ago, Robert Fulton came up with the design for steamboats, which is why he had a monopoly kind of over them. Besides it being a board game, monopoly means mono, that prefix one person or company in control of like all of something. So Robert Fulton had control over the majority of steamboats and shipping in this instance. The federal government had a problem with New York basically signing a private contract with him and wanted the Navy to be used to ship goods. So the reason this resulted in the power of national governments trumping state government was because this could have been negatively impacting the economy of other states. You might be thinking how this plays into the Bill of Rights and reserved powers, and it is basically this. How you guys kind of have control over what you do in a classroom to an extent is how the states have those reserved powers. However, when you guys start acting a fool or your actions start negatively influencing other students and you get called out or fussed out or in trouble, that's what ends up happening here. New York was doing something that could negatively influence other states, so the government said, no, you can't do that. This is unlike how places like Nevada have casinos and can gamble. Yes, people can go and gamble there, and gamble's technically illegal, but they're not really hurting anybody. So this is kind of how that ends up working, because that was one of the biggest questions I had was how does reserve powers play into all of this? Fun little trivia fact too is, if I'm not mistaken, the name of Fulton's steamboats was the New York Knickerbockers, and that is where the team, the New York Knicks, actually ended up getting their name from. Okay, little political cartoon here. Again, argument about who actually has the right to do the shipping, and in the end, the national government very much won that argument. So, now we have Worcester versus Georgia. Samuel Worcester was a missionary that lived with the Cherokee Indians and decided to sue the government for saying that white settlers on their land had to have a permit. The verdict was that the federal government said they don't have any jurisdiction over Indian affairs. And that's why today when we talk about the Cherokee Indians, we usually refer to them as the Cherokee Nation. They're kind of looked at as their own nation within our own. Hence the reason of why we said we kind of can't dictate and tell them what to do. Result is Andrew Jackson removed the Indians from their territory anyway. Now, before you get the wrong idea here, yes, that sounds terrible, but there's a lot more that goes into this story that you will see very soon. His famous quote from Andrew Jackson, and there'll be a lot of famous quotes about him throughout this chapter, will be that John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. Which is kind of why Jackson ended up getting his way, but oddly enough, it didn't even take place during Jackson's presidency when the Indians were removed from their land. So Worcester went on the Trail of Tears with the Cherokee, and he published the first Cherokee Bible. Like I said, there's a lot more to this Indian Removal Act and story, so just hang on and we'll get to that soon. Excuse me. So here you've got a picture of Samuel Worcester. This is the missionary that spoke up for the Cherokee Indian, went with them on the Trail of Tears, and published a Cherokee Bible. Okay. So we have a very big timeline of events here for Andrew Jackson, and hopefully I can remember as many of these stories as possible to kind of help you understand who he is as a person. So in 1767, he was born in South Carolina. Now, if you recall back when we learned the presidents with the song with Mr. Nichols, he told you some stories about Andrew Jackson. So hopefully this one will sound a little familiar to you. During the Revolutionary War, remember Revolutionary War, we've got America fighting the British for our freedom. Basically, his home was broken into by the British, and, well, some things happened. Mom was taken hostage and prisoner, same thing, and I believe it was his brother as well. And when the captain laid eyes on Andrew Jackson, he pretty much popped his boot up on their table and said, "Shine my shoes, boy." Now, Andrew Jackson had some anger issues, to put it mildly. And at this point, Andrew Jackson very rudely and vulgarly informed this British captain of some information about his mother, along the lines of, "You blankety blank blank blank." You kind of get the picture. Now, what this young child was able to say infuriated this British officer so much that the British officer took his sword and actually swung at Jackson with complete and total intent on killing him. Jackson ends up holding his arm and blocking the blade with it, and pretty much the sword cuts all the way through to the bone. Like, the actual bone in his arm is what stopped it from going any further and potentially killing him. The guy swung at him so hard that it actually pushed his arm backwards toward his face, and I believe Mr. Nichols said it ended up cutting his eyebrow, and he would have those scars for the rest of his life. Now, his mother, brother, and him were taken prisoner at this point in time. Eventually they were released, and on the way back home, I believe his brother died of smallpox. Andrew Jackson was also sick with smallpox, was able to be cured from it, but not long after being cured from it, his mother also ended up passing away. Now, later in life, Jackson moves to Nashville, Tennessee, I believe because he's now orphaned, and is going to try to live with another family member. And he and this family member just don't quite see eye to eye. The family member is actually quite scared of Jackson and his temper, and the look in his eye, it's quoted as being said several times, the man has the look of kill in his eye. So, living arrangements with that family member didn't work out, and at this point Jackson decides to put himself through college to become a lawyer. So this results to probably one of what I think is the funniest escapades that he does. While he's at school, there is a Christmas party that he is hosting, and all the right people with all the right last names and all the right money are invited to this Christmas party. And it's going very well. People are having a great time. They're talking, they're smoozing. It's typical Christmas party. Until some other guests begin to arrive. Now, Jackson had taken the special care to invite probably every working lady at the local brothels to come to this Christmas party. So as Lucy Goosey and all of her friends are coming in and saying, "Oh, hey James, hey Derek, hey Steve," all of these businessmen's jaws are hitting the floor, and they're having that "oh no, oh no, 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 no" moment. Because not only are these businessmen there, so are their wives. So you can imagine what the wife of any man in this time period's thinking. How do you know her, and why is she smiling at you like that? Needless to say, the Christmas party kind of devolved into chaos and arguments and some marital unhappiness, while Andrew Jackson was pretty much sitting back at the punch bowl laughing maniacally and hysterically at all of the hot mess that he had stirred in that moment. Again, to give you a little bit of glimpse into his personality. Now, during his time in Tennessee, something else really important happens. He meets a woman, I do believe her name is Rachel, and he and Rachel like each other. However, Rachel is very, very married, and they're both going to respect the fact that she's married and nothing come of this. Rachel's husband is going to tell her to go on ahead to another part of the country and live there and wait for him to join up with her because he had some loose ends he needed to tie up. Well, about 2 years later, Rachel's husband has never reunited with her. Again, looking at these dates in this day and time, if you don't hear from a human in 2 years, because they could totally write you a letter or do something to give you some inkling that, hey, they're alive and okay, you're most likely and logically going to assume that, well, they're dead. Whether they'd been attacked by Indians, killed off by some disease, maybe they were shot in a duel, who knows? Okay? But either way, she very much thinks her husband is dead. At this point in time, her and Jackson begin seeing each other, and things get serious, and they get married. And about a year into their relationship of being married to one another, guess who shows up? Rachel's long-lost husband. At which point Andrew Jackson says, okay, you two have some things you need to discuss, and I'm going to give you some time to get your affairs in order. And during this time, Rachel and her actual real husband, not Jackson, go to the courthouse. They file for divorce, get their marriage annulled, and Rachel ends up going back to Andrew Jackson because they really truly did love each other, and you know, it would be pretty hard to salvage a marriage where you'd kind of been abandoned for over 2 years and had never heard anything from your scoundrel of what was supposed to be your husband. So, again, they get back together. Now, keep this in mind because it's going to come up here very soon, and it's going to play a big role into who Andrew Jackson is and why he does a lot of the things he does during his presidency. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in this here because you've been listening for almost 13 whole minutes now, and I'm going to start a new video for part 3. So appreciate you guys for putting up with all this and hanging in there with the craziness. I really do miss seeing you guys and having my classroom and just everything kind of going to our normal schedule, but at least our real official spring break's almost here. Hope you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll be back with part 3 soon.